Today's episode is all about how does the national media view the Houston Texans going into the 2025 season after the 2025 offseason. Did they make the right adjustments and moves to put themselves in a better position? That conversation will be had with PFF's own Dalton Wasserman.
You are Locked On Texans, your daily podcast on the Houston Texans. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
From H-Town to your town, today's show is all about Texan fans all around. Shout out to all of my Houston Texan fans out there. Thank you for making this show your first listen of the day, for being part of the Locked On Podcast Network. If you are one of our everydayers, that means I see you in the comments all the time. You retweet the show all the time. I really appreciate you. Thank you for being an everydayer from the Himalaya of the Texans, Locked On Texans podcast. Today's show, like I mentioned, is all about, where is the view right now for the Houston Texans? Where could they improve? Did they improve over the offseason? How does all of the national pundits feel about the Houston Texans? And with that being said, a friend of the show is coming back, PFF's own Dalton Wasserman will be giving his thoughts. And we know the connection with Bobby Slowik, with PFF. He's gone now. And so it'll be very interesting to see just the conversation that me and Dalton was able to have here on the Locked On Texas podcast. And today's episode was brought to you by Monarch Money. Take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use code LOCKEDONNFL at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. Before we get into the conversation, I'll let you guys know that we will be diving into the YouTube comments to end off today's show together. You guys have been loving the squad shows. They drop every Tuesday and Friday. We go live at 6 p.m. Tuesdays and Fridays. And you guys have been loving it, whether you have enjoyed and love the banter between myself and Stan, whether you appreciated Aisha's input, especially with her football terminology. You guys know that if you've been here for a while, I love to talk football. I love to talk to Phil. She's done a great job of that. Whether you enjoy MC's controlling the show and his input, make sure you check out the squad show, the Texan squad show, every Tuesday and Friday, starting at 6 p.m., and we'll dive into the comments together to close off today's show. Now it's time to dive into the conversation, the one-on-one with Dalton Wasserman of PFF. And as promised, Dalton Wasserman of PFF is here joining the Locked On Texan podcast. Dalton, thank you for taking time out of your busy schedule.
Appreciate you having me on, John. It's always good to check in.
Always good to have you, and I'm super excited for our conversation today because the eyes of PFF is here on the Locked On Texans podcast to discuss Houston. No more Bobby Slowik. Insert Nick Caley at offensive coordinator. And before, when you came on the show back in November, we discussed the issues of the offense, and it never worked its way out. But are you confident in the thought process from Houston right now that coaching and the coaching changes will fix the problems, or do you believe it'll be personnel related after this offseason?
It's always a combination of both, right? I think they're looking probably for a different element of the offense, especially of the run game, from Nick Caley coming from Sean McVay's system, where he's gotten more downhill and away from the zone run game like he used to be. McVay's a Shanahan disciple, and or Mike Shanahan and Kyle Shanahan back in the day, but he's gotten more downhill in those duo run schemes. So I do wonder if maybe simplifying the run scheme and trying to get more vertical with it in the run game would help them a little bit. But I think it's also a personnel thing. Look, everybody around the league, everybody who watches the league knows that this team is really going to be really dependent on the progress of their offensive line if they can make any. So it's a combination of both. But I think Caley going in there and simplifying things and getting CJ Stroud under center, running more play action from under center could really be a big help.
That's Dalton Wasserman. Dalton, before we continue with our conversation, where can all of our listeners and viewers find you on social media?
PFF_Dalton on Twitter, and then as always, all of our great analysts and myself on PFF.com with our written content, and on the PFF NFL show, and for me, the PFF college football show, myself and Max Chadwick, both on YouTube, but PFF_Dalton on Twitter.
Does a lot of great work. To continue with the conversation, you mentioned something, Nick Caley kind of more getting downhill, getting vertical, got away from the lot of zone runs that we typically have come to see from Kyle Shanahan, not Kyle Shanahan, excuse me, from Sean McVay, coming from the Shanahan tree, playing more to the strengths of the players that they are given to operate with, right? Drafting free agency and everything. So what are your thoughts on Nick Caley altogether?
I think you're definitely going to get – he's going to try to bring balance first and foremost. And I know this team, look, it's going to be centered around C.J. Stroud. Any team wants to center their franchise around their franchise quarterback, right? And he's proven through 2 years that he is that. You know, some people think there's been a big regression last year. I just think they didn't block very well for him. And by the end of the year, he was out of receivers other than Nico Collins. But I think it's a matter of trying to find balance. And I think a lot of teams – you saw the Eagles win a Super Bowl with a balanced offense. A lot of teams are trying to get back into running and stopping the run. 10 of the top 13 teams in run play percentage, just calling run plays last year, made the postseason. And I think Houston wants to get back into that mode of having balance, even though they have a great quarterback. So that's what I'm expecting. More tight end sets, more multiple tight end sets, I should say. You know, obviously guys like Dalton Schultz and Cade Stover still there. Maybe get multiple tight ends out there. You got 2 good weapons in the draft from Iowa State as well on the outside. So a mix of personnel, but definitely I think he's going to, even though this offensive line struggles right now, or there may be, he's going to want to try to run the football and get balance into this offense and not put too much pressure on C.J. Stroud to carry the whole thing.
I cannot wait to hear your thoughts on Jaden Higgins and Jalen Noel. But before we get to those players, how high are you on the Texans roster right now, post-draft and free agency?
Still pretty high. You know, I still, you know, Max Chadwick and I just did a ranking of all 32 rosters, and we still had the Texans as the 7th best one. Now, there's obvious weaknesses when you talk about the offensive line and a little bit at defensive tackle and run defense, but you look at an excellent pair of edge rushers, a fantastic secondary, a franchise quarterback, a potentially really good receiving core with Nico Collins as one of the top probably 5 or 6 receivers in the league. Still have Joe Mixon at tailback, Dalton Schultz and Cade Stover at tight end. There's a lot to like about this Texans team. I think you look at the roster, it's still the best roster in the division. It's still one of the best rosters in football. There's just some obvious weaknesses in the trenches that might hold them back, or at least the last 2 years have held them back from getting into that Super Bowl conversation. But they're still a very good football team.
Dalton, you've mentioned Dalton Schultz a couple times now. And last year, when we look at some of the woes and, you know, downfalls that he went through in 2024, you know, I think a lot of it could be wrapped into being asked to do things he's not comfortable with, being asked to do things that maybe he's never been, you know, he's never excelled in that area. But now with Nick Caley, what do you believe we'll see from Dalton Schultz this year? Do you think we'll kind of see a different role change, or will they just put him in a position to do the things that he's always done right?
You might see him a little more in line depending on how many, you know, how much they want to use multiple tight end sets, right? And he's an average blocker. I wouldn't call him great. I wouldn't call him terrible. And they've got Cade Stover in there too, who's generally been, you know, the pass protection is an issue for the tight ends. I know we've talked about that before, but I also think that, you know, guys like Sean McVay and Nick Caley, if he's going to do the same thing, they find ways to get tight ends open from different alignments too, you know, and if that means Stover is the guy more often that's in line and then Schultz gets in the slot, moves around the formation more, you know, I think it's something that tree and those coaches have done a lot, even when they have multiple tight ends out there. So I do think, you know, again, with better wide receivers out there and healthier wide receivers out there this year, with, you know, a new coach that gives a fresh perspective on how to use those tight ends, it's a system that's always been friendly for those guys. So, and we have to remember too, Schultz still a solid player. 5 straight years with over 600 yards receiving.
Yes,
it's pretty good. I mean, that's still, you're talking maybe top 12 even tight end in the league. He's not a bad football player. He needs a little bit of a bounce back, but we've seen him play really good football before, especially in Houston.
We definitely have. We have more Locked On Texans with Dalton Wasserman on the other side of the break, because I want to dive into where do you think the Houston Texans could improve, starting with the quarterback. And as we get ready to go into the summer season, where a lot of spending is going on this summer, right? Every summer, especially if you got kids, you're going to spend some money. It's always important to make sure you do everything that you can in your power to just make sure that your money is still secured, and just to track your money, track your spending. How can you get better at making sure that everything is where it's supposed to be and nothing frivolous is going out, right? Especially if you're taking these family trips. All your pennies count. And that's where Monarch Money comes in, your personal CFO, giving you full visibility and control over your finances. Monarch Money is not just another budgeting app. It's a complete financial command center where you can track all of your accounts, investments, and spending all in one place, So you just stop managing your money and start building wealth. That's very important. When I started using Monarch Money, I realized just how much I was spending on food delivery. That's DoorDash. Now I got that off my phone. Don't even use it. And I kind of started to budget a little bit smarter. Like I like shoes. I like buying shoes now in my older age because I can. And I can't do it every paycheck. But I budget my money out to say, okay, every third paycheck I can do it because I have the money and funds to do so. Monarch Money helps with all of that. Managing your money with your partner is smoother than ever because you can track all of your shared and personal accounts, set goals together, and stay on the same page without the stress. Take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use code Locked On NFL at Monarch Money for 50% off your first year. That's monarchmoney.com, code Locked On NFL for half off your first year. Thank you for staying locked in on the Locked On Texans podcast. We're going to get back to the conversation with my man Dalton over from PFF. This will get interesting. Where could the Houston Texans improve? Welcome back, Locked On Texans. Thank you for staying locked in on today's show. Dalton Wasserman of PFF is here joining me to talk Houston Texans. What is the national sentiment right now between you and your colleagues regarding the Houston Texans? Like, we saw the grade PFF gave Houston. I believe it was a D, extremely low grade, but you gave them a very good in terms of like where they are roster wise, a good ranking. Lose Laremy Tunsil, that didn't kind of go well with the PFF guys, but how are you guys viewing Houston's chances to make a real run at this thing?
I think generally when we look at the Texans right now, because of some of the weaknesses on the offensive line and in run defense, right between the tackles, I always go back to that image of Derrick Henry running through the Texans on Christmas Day. And I know people watching this show probably don't want to hear about it, but run defense matters, right? When you talk, or even playing the Chiefs in the playoffs, it was a very ball control approach from the Chiefs. Those two things are holding them back from being one of those inner circle Super Bowl contenders. Still, again, a very talented team, a very good team with some real strengths, but probably in that second tier of, okay, they're a playoff team, but do they have enough in the trenches to make a real run at a trophy, right? So I think, I have them, again, 7th in my roster rankings, and I think maybe the 7th or 8th best team in football. Sounds about right for them. It's just hard with weaknesses, especially in pass protection, okay? What is it? Of the last 8 Super Bowl champions, 7 of them have been in the top 7 of pass blocking grade for us. And the Texans were, I believe, 21st last year, even with Laremy Tunsil in there. So if you can't pass protect nowadays, if you can't protect your quarterback, you're not a Super Bowl contender, right? So I would put them a step below that. They're in a really good second tier. I still think right now they're the favorite to win that division, but it's hard to see them as one of the 3, 4, 5 Super Bowl contenders, one of those inner circle teams.
So, where they are right now, like how could Houston improve? Right? They're going to start the fight in the battle soon for the 53-man roster. One thing that I have on this show is the fight for the final 5, and that is for the offensive line unit. They keep talking about they're going to put the best 5 out there. Where could Houston get over that hump to be a real contender or at least be in that contention conversation?
That's where it starts, is finding who those best 5 guys are up front and going with it and hope they just gel together in a new system quickly. And I think it's first and foremost, obviously, it's about protecting C.J. Stroud. We all know that. I mean, there's some new veteran guys that are getting in there. Obviously, Cam Robinson, who played decent last year, even playing for 2 teams, Jacksonville and Minnesota. Cam Robinson might be the guy to replace Tunsil on the left side. Got all those interior guys that you're hoping get better, right? A guy like Jared Patterson, Drew Scruggs, Blake Fisher at right tackle, possibly if he's still going to play there. Titus Howard, is he playing inside or outside, or where is he playing, right? So I think that's obviously where it starts, is that even though this is the case for trading Tunsil. First of all, they got a boatload of draft capital, but second of all, they weren't that good even with Laremy Tunsil. So it could go one of 2 ways. They could either just find a way to click together as a group and be relatively average, which they weren't last year, or it does cave in, and we're talking about this next offseason. But that's the first bit of improvement that has to happen, at least marginally, on that offensive line, protecting C.J. Stroud, opening good enough holes, get those double teams going, maybe if Nick Caley's going to go with that more downhill run scheme, and see where it goes from there. But that's really the first place I look. And the second one, again, run defense. I think getting Azeez Al-Shire, first of all, through, I think he had some injuries or concussions, something like that last year, and then you had the 3-game suspension. When he was on the field, their run defense was pretty good. But when he was not, it really fell apart because the defensive tackles weren't great. So again, I look at the trenches, the interior of the offensive line and the defensive line. That's really where they need to get better to take that next step.
You guys also rank Cam Robinson as the X factor for Houston in 2025. Where does Cam Robinson fit into the conversation of, oh, this is helping the Houston Texans, and how does he fit, in your opinion, with Nick Caley and that offense?
I think when you talk about him playing left tackle, maybe he's not the superstar that Laremy Tunsil was, but he's been a consistent player throughout his career, especially in pass protection. Last year, a little more of a struggle when he got to Minnesota because he was hopping into a new system right after a trade. But the 3 previous years before that, pass blocking grades for us, 76, 75, and 78, all certainly good enough numbers to start. And, Tunsil gave them that last year, but not a whole lot of other guys did. So I think if you're going to replace Laremy Tunsil in a pinch before you're trying to maybe find, say, a franchise left tackle in next year's draft or something like that, Robinson's not a bad guy to have. He's a solid starter. He's been a solid pass protector for several years now, and he's just a good seasoned veteran who's going to know what he's doing out there.
How do you view C.J. Stroud right now, and where do you believe he needs to improve going into year 3?
I think, me personally, I think he's solidly a top 10 quarterback. I really do. I think he's fully capable if given the right surroundings. If the 2 receivers from Iowa State develop, especially around Nico Collins, and they get this offensive line right in the next year or 2, I view CJ Stroud as a guy who can eventually win a trophy. I really do. I think he's terrific. The processing was even better last year. Yeah, there weren't as many big time throws, and there was regression, particularly on the deep ball last year. His rookie year, he was, I think, maybe number 1 in deep passing grade for us beyond 20 yards. Last year, he was really good in the intermediate game throwing to Collins and underneath, but the deep ball kind of went away. But I also think that's in part due to the receivers and a perceived kind of lack of creativity in the offense. We remember them creating all those deep shots. I remember even in the playoff game against the Browns, taking those deep play action shots downfield. I think that's going to be part of the idea of getting those 2 Iowa State receivers in there too. I know you want to talk about them. Jaden Higgins and Jalen Noel, especially, is an absolute blazer who can slice right through the middle of a defense. I loved watching those 2 guys at Iowa State last year, but I think that's really the big thing. And there's often a high variance with the deep ball from year to year. If he can get the deep ball back as well as the improvement that he showed last year throwing underneath, I think Stroud's solidly a top 8 to 10 quarterback and eventually is a guy who is capable of winning a Super Bowl. I really do.
Dalton, that is what the Texan fans want to hear. They need to hear, especially considering the up and down season from Stroud last year in 2024. But you are absolutely right. I can't wait to ask you about Jaden Higgins and Jalen Noel, so I'm not going to wait anymore. How do you feel about those 2 young men out of Iowa State? This past week, I had Coach Noah Pauly on the show doing a rookie diary series covering both of those 2 young men. He spoke very highly of them. Of course, he coached them, but they are coming in with the expectation of come help save this wide receiver room, right? Come help be the 2 guys that can help this unit get over the hump. What are your thoughts on those 2 rookies?
They're both so talented, and I love that they ended up on the same team in the NFL too. It was one of the coolest things I thought of draft weekend.
They can keep their fishing show. They had a fishing show going on too.
Absolutely. We on the college football show, myself and Max Chadwick, like and subscribe to that too, because we cover a whole lot, especially of the Power 5, and we try to cover as many teams as we can. But watching those guys at Iowa State, we covered them almost every week. They're both extremely talented. And they're both extremely different, right? Jaden Higgins, he's got a lot of Nico Collins in him. He's big. He's 6'4". He's got fantastic hands. He's a really good route runner and gets really good releases off the line, better than most guys that I've seen at 6'4". And I do wonder if the Texans, if they didn't get that offer for the trade, I believe it was from the Giants, I wonder if they would have just taken him at 25 if they think he's that good. I think to have him and Collins as 2 big-bodied receivers out on the outside, I'll tell you right now, Jaden Higgins is a guy, you need a first down, that's where you're going. At whether it's 3rd and 8, 3rd and 12, just get him to the chains, let him use that big body to make contested catches. And then Noel to me brings an element of speed that this Texans receiving core. Collins has speed. He can get vertical, but for the most part, they didn't have, especially from the slot after Tank Dell got hurt. And then Stephon Diggs got hurt. He's not what he used to be vertically, right? And even Christian Kirk, I like to get the Christian Kirk trade, getting him for basically nothing, but he's not the burner that Noel is. Jalen Noel is a guy who can line up in the slot. He's a really good route runner who can beat man coverage, and he's got enough speed to get vertical. I can tell you right now, that 4.3 that he ran at the combine, that's legitimate game speed. There are certain guys that train for months on end of the combine and they look fast at the combine. The game speed doesn't. Jalen Knowles' game speed plays. He can take the top off, especially down the middle of the field on any play, and he's super, super competitive. I love both of those guys. And again, the fact that they're both on the same team again now in Houston, absolutely love it because they complement each other so well.
They absolutely do. And you look at how Houston, they brought both of those guys in. They traded for Christian Kirk, like you mentioned. They already had Nico Collins. I think Houston looked at their situation, and I've been saying this for a while. They looked at their situation and they looked at, okay, what do we do well and how can we continue to capitalize off of it? And I see Nico Collins and I see, okay, they just drafted Jaden Higgins. And so the two Iowa State guys, I believe, will just be mirroring the vets that are already on this team. And that leads me to my last question. Realistically, if everything works out for the Houston Texans, what does a successful offense look like? If you notice, we haven't talked defense. We are comfortable with the defense right now. They added some players, CJ Gardner-Johnson, of course, but that wasn't the issue. It's the offense. If a successful offense were to happen here in Houston, what does that look like?
I think it starts with, can the offensive line at least play at an average level? Okay. And you know, people, it's not flashy. I get it. And everybody wants to have the Lions or the Eagles offensive line or what have you. But this team, they were 21st in the league in pass blocking grade for us. They were 25th in run blocking grade. If either or both of those were, say, 15th or 16th, it's not a massive improvement, but it's at least at an average level. And I think Stroud is of that level of quarterback. Joe Burrow's had this same problem for his whole career in Cincinnati. He's always had a bottom five offensive line, and the weeks where they protect him and the weeks where they run block, they're almost unstoppable offensively up here in Cincinnati, I should say. And Houston, I think, with Stroud and those receivers, especially the way Collins has developed the last couple of years, Houston can get to that point, but it starts up front with the offensive line. As far as what Nick Caley brings you, you're talking about balance. You're talking about having balance, having enough of the run game, and this another problem here in Cincinnati. I just see these situations very similarly where it's, if you give us enough run game, you open enough play action for Stroud to work with, and he doesn't just have to drop back all the time. So I do think it starts up front. If they can block it at least an average level, I think everything else just kind of falls like dominoes, and Stroud can run the show from there as long as you protect him well enough.
Thank you, Dalton, for stopping by. Once again, can you let all our listeners and viewers know where they can find all of your great work?
Absolutely. Find me at PFF_Dalton on Twitter, PFF.com for articles from myself and all our great analysts. When you're talking NFL, college, fantasy, betting, we got a CFL guy. We got everything you could ever want on the website. And then on YouTube, the PFF NFL show, generally myself and Trevor Sikkema. Max Chadwick will fill in there too. And then the college football show on YouTube, PFF College Football Show, myself, Max Chadwick. For anybody down there who's in Texas or A&M or Texas Tech or whoever it may be, we got you covered on the PFF College Football Show too.
I almost forgot. Have your thoughts on Derek Stingley Jr.
Changed as far as what? Is he not an elite player or something? Because that's an elite player.
Well, okay,
no question about that.
When you joined the show in November, I remember you saying you was kind of still out on him a little bit, but of course he finished the year how he finished it. And all pro Derek Stingley. Thank you for stopping by, Dalton. I appreciate it, man.
Yeah, no problem, John. You have a good one.
Thank you for making Locked On Texans your first listen of this weekend. For your second listen, check out Locked On Scouting. Training camp is about a month and some change away. Mandatory mini camps, that's in a couple of days. Moves are being made. Host Kyle Krabs and Joe Marino will make you the most informed NFL fan this offseason. Find Locked On NFL Scouting on YouTube or wherever you listen to your podcast. Welcome back, Texans fans. Make sure you guys check out all of the great things that Dalton Wasserman does for himself over at PFF. We're back here on the Locked On Network, diving into the YouTube comments. Specifically, I got to kick it off with the comments under the squad show. This was the Friday's edition, which is why I kind of waited to put the show out. YBM Simba 2410. You said something that I loved. Run more 10 personnel. I absolutely hated seeing all the bunch formations under Bobby, especially when you know your offensive line is questionable. Spread them out more this year. We have the wide receivers for it now. Give me Nico and Higgins outside, Kirk and Noel in the slot inside. Again, especially with a struggling O-line, which I believe will be a little bit better. You help them out by getting the ball out quickly. You're also going to create some obvious mismatches because you're going to get some 1v1s with Nico and Higgins outside and or Noah or Kirk inside against a linebacker or a safety. Plus, the motion and eye candy you could give the defense. And if you need to, keep a running back in to pick up blitzes. My comment to that is, hey man, let's do it. Let's do it, Simba. I think for Houston, again, man, last year was not a lot of diversity. It was for the Houston Texans, it was, about for the play caller with Bobby Slowik, it was, this is what I want to do. It was very, if we do all of this, then we're going to score 25 points per game. And Houston was one of the better offenses in the first half last year for the 2024 season. But then teams caught up to them in the second half. They made the adjustments, and Bobby never made those adjustments. So when I read a comment like that, first and foremost, I just respect it in terms of from a football aspect. It ain't a lot of complaining. It ain't a lot of, what should we do with this? It's how about the Texans try this? And given the personnel that Houston has, and you say Kirk and Noel, I say Kirk and Dalton Schultz out there in the slot as well, right? Which is where I think he needs to be. He don't need to be too much in line. We don't want to see a lot of him blocking this year. But for the Houston Texans, it's absolutely all about, creating that best mismatch. Because we know Nico can win almost every battle. We've seen him do it. But one thing that Stan says, and I have to be fair with it, these are two rookies, and they got to make their NFL adjustments. Now, I believe Jaden Higgins can be a 800-yard rookie receiver, and that's fair. He's not going to be a team's number one. So, number two, getting 800 yards in his rookie year, that's pretty decent. But I do think it's all about, okay, how the defense is playing us. Like if I'm a play caller, if I'm Nick Caley, how they're playing us right now, more space is going to help us out. More space will help us out. It'll help us out in the passing game because all I got to do for my quarterback is to have a play, 3-step drop, get the ball out. Maybe not even like 3-step, just one read based off of the coverage. That will allow for the defense to become more spread out, which will help running lanes a little bit. A lot of it, actually, especially if those guards are able to get a body out the way and get to the second level. So I love that comment. That's why I'm highlighting it, because I absolutely think a little bit of that more this year will help the Houston Texans out a lot. Jarrell Scott, there's a chance that Stroud might not be a top quarterback like Allen, Jackson, and Mahomes. He probably will never be a top 5 quarterback. Ooh, Jarrell Scott, 5203. That may not sit well with some Texan fans. Maybe he's top 11 to 15. He's a top 11 to 15 type of quarterback. I'm going to go against the grain on that one. I am going to go against the grain on that one. Mahomes, Josh Allen, Lamar Jackson, Joe Burrow. Those are the 4 quarterbacks in the NFL for me that I say, okay, well, regardless of what's going on, if those guys are on the field for majority of the season, those guys are going to be the top 4 quarterbacks. Now, after that, you start to look at, okay, how does people feel about Matthew Stafford? He has a real case to be a top 5 quarterback, top 6 quarterback in the NFL right now. Jalen Hurts is in that discussion. When it gets to 7, 8, 9, 10, specifically 8, 9, and 10, CJ Stroud was a 8, 9, 10, 7, 8, 9, 10 quarterback his rookie year. And for all of the CJ Stroud had a down year, for all of that conversation, if we are still being fair, CJ Stroud threw for over 3,700 yards last year. Being sacked over 50 times, being hit 100 times, never had I think it was 2 games maybe with Stephon, Tank, Nico, and Joe all together. All things considered, the down year for CJ Stroud is a good year for a lot of quarterbacks. So I'm going to go against the grain, and I'm going to say that it isn't written yet. It ain't written yet. And to be in the true top 5 conversations, I think you need multiple years. Or you need a year. Like when Lamar Jackson got on the scene for real in his sophomore year, he was on the scene for real. Like he won he won MVP that year. So CJ hadn't had a season like that. But how long did it take Josh Allen to get into those top 5 quarterback conversations? How long? Again, Patrick Mahomes, his second year in the NFL, 50 touchdowns, Super Bowl. So those guys, Mahomes and Jackson got in there on their own merit because of just how explosive they came on the scene when they finally got their shot. But how long did it take Josh Allen? Joe Burrow got into those conversations when they did what? Went to the Super Bowl. So it's going to take a minute unless CJ can take this team to the promised land this year. Then it's a little bit different. But I absolutely believe 8, 9, and 10. Oh, yeah. You'll be a top 10 quarterback. Top 5 is where it gets shaky because some of those guys ain't coming off their block for a while. Ain't nothing you can really do about it, honestly. 5 is where you can make a case for CJ if everything goes right for him. If the offense is clicking on all cylinders, they're blocking for him. If he's doing what he needs to do. If mechanics are back on. But Mahomes, Jackson, Allen, Burrow. Those are the 4. Super Bowl appearance, Super Bowl second year, MVP second year, and Josh Allen. It took Josh Allen maybe his 4th year to actually be in those top 5 conversations. CJ is going into year 3. They've made offensive changes. All of these offensive changes the Houston Texans made, the presumption is this will get our quarterback over the hump because the offense will benefit from it. But to say 11, 12, 15, 11 to 15, that's kind of regulated for the Kyler Murrays, for the Kirk Cousins. 15. I think Brock Purdy has a case for top 10 now. Is Brock Purdy better than CJ Stroud? I don't think so. I think there's a lot of benefactors when you look at Brock Purdy's success. And I don't disrespect that. I respect him taking over and doing what he does. Top 15 quarterback in the NFL. Russell Wilson? Does he have 15? Justin Herbert. Like, how does people view him? Because when we start rounding out quarterbacks, there's no way I'm putting Herbert over CJ Stroud no more. And I'm a huge Justin Herbert fan. Top 15. Where does people view Tua Tagovailoa? He's not top 10. Is he better than CJ Stroud? I don't think so. So I believe right now CJ is a top 10 quarterback. I believe with an improved offensive system, he could very well be 6 to 8. But he'll definitely round out 8, 9, and 10. There's no doubt in my mind about that. And Jarrell Scott, you are an everydayer. Shame on you for even saying that, man. Raz Sosa. I dropped the Rookie Diary series. Jalen Noel mentioned that, hey, listen, man, can he be the next Steve Smith? That's the conversation. A man said, I don't know about that title. Jalen will have to prove himself. And also, another guy, my man David Pitts, 2766. Steve Smith was a monster. We can only hope he is something like that. I have high hopes, but I reserve my praise till the season. He's not going to be Steve Smith in year 1, guys. Steve Smith wasn't even Steve Smith in year 1. But potentially, Jaden Higgins, both Jaden Higgins and Jalen Noel, both of those guys' true impact won't be felt until they're third year in the NFL, I believe. I believe Higgins will be an impact player this year, no doubt about it, in some capacity. I believe Noah will be an impact player this year in some capacity. However, what I think helps Houston is the guys that are in front of them, healthy seasons, they should be able to do everything that the expectation is for the rookies. And so that gives the rookies some time to kind of just learn the NFL. But once those guys get going for real, he could very well be a player that lines up everywhere and no matter the matchup can make a play. And I'm excited to see the future for not only Jalen Noah, but also Jaden Higgins. And I will return with the Rookie Diary series starting on Monday. Thank you guys for watching today's episode of the Locked On Texans podcast. Please be sure to subscribe, like, and comment on YouTube, wherever you listen to your podcast, and follow me on Twitter at John_Hickman12. Squad shows Tuesdays and Fridays, 6 o'clock p.m. live. You don't want to miss the next one or the next one after that or the next one after that or the next one after that. Until next time, ladies and gents, enjoy your weekend. Peace.